If it bums out, good luck.
Yeah, he always does that. Plus, we count down, and there's Mike waiting for it to come through on a slow internet. Hey, you're live again. Go for it, Mike.
All right, everybody. Welcome to California Free Radio, the show which is really all about you in California. I'm Mike Netter. If you don't know that by now, you'll learn quickly. And this show is being blasted live on my Twitter feed at Netter Mike. It's being blasted live on LinkedIn at Mike Netter. And it's being blasted live on Mike Netter on Facebook and our Facebook groups. Now, Scott and I are just back for everyone out there and was reported in Netter News from the California Republican Convention. Scott, can you hear me with the technical difficulties I'm having? Do we have
All right.
content?
We have we have
All right.
ignition,
We're
and
making
this is
progress here.
California Free Radio. For those of you that didn't catch that from Mike, from behind the blue curtain. So tell us what happened at the Republican State Convention this last weekend,
Well,
Mike.
the two of you were there.
Well, let's start with something to be clear. A convention, as I always put it, it's kind of like for everyone out there when your family all gets together for the holidays. It's a dysfunctional grouping of family, but they are all our family. And there's two different sides, like at any convention. Our side got a lot done. We, the freedom fighters, the other side, which is establishment, they got something done too. But the reality is, Scott, it really is a great time. The biggest bad news was, Scott, probably for you, is that you had to spend a lot of time with me.
Yeah, I can only take you in certain doses, and I think I OD'd this weekend for sure. But I have to say, okay, you guys, we sit there and we walk down through the convention.
Hey, Scott, why
And
don't you introduce yourself since Mike did not introduce you other than your first name?
Yeah, so I'm Scott Peotter, former candidate for assembly from November of last year, uh, against a pretty well-funded Democrat. I lost. But hey, California Free Radio is here. I'm an architect. I'm a freedom-loving conservative. And Kurt, tell us about you too.
Kurt English, Los Angeles, born and bred, Rinaldi Elementary School, Tulsa Elementary School, Portola Junior High School, Taft High School graduate, Caltech in Pasadena, and USC. So when I
Yeah, you
speak
got a
about
lot of
Los Angeles, I'm an immigrant because it's not good enough a good enough place to live in now.
Yeah, you're also a Dodger fan, but we won't hold it against you.
Who is
So,
in first place, having swept the Cubs. And Mike, the Dodgers are going to be in first place probably almost the rest of the year.
Well, sweeping a club Cubs isn't that big,
Oh, they're going to win
considering.
their division this year, Mike. Milwaukee lost Corbin Burns and Wiley
okay,
Adams.
okay,
All
okay.
right, all right.
No
Before
more
we
Dodger
turn this into
talk.
a sports report,
So,
um,
as I was saying with Mike, you can't walk down hardly anywhere in the convention without people stopping Mike and saying hi. He can't get more than about 20 feet, and he's got to talk to somebody else. So, needless to say, I went ahead without him a lot of times, but it was fun. Got to meet a lot of new people, and the Republican Party is not dead in California. It just looks like it
and
sometimes.
Nicolo Bear, by the way, yes, Rebuild California, our entire team was there. And it's always great to see everybody live. And that really, for everyone out there, even if you go as a guest, as an associate delegate, which Scott and I as delegates can make you, it's always a good idea to go to the convention and see how the Republican convention works. And next, I believe, October, okay, that convention is going to take place in Anaheim. So it rotates every other time, southern to northern. One of the things at the convention, which did come out, one, we did a show with a fabulous Susan Crabtree, fabulous author who wrote the book Fool's Gold on Gavin Newsom. Ooh, nice prop, Peotter. I like that.
Hey,
Oh, great book. That's a
see,
great book, Scott.
see the pictures on the bottom. Some of the gruesome foursome. We have Adam Schiff for brains. We have Nancy Pelosi. We have Gruesome Newsom, and our favorite, Kamala Harris.
Kamala.
Kamila.
We introduced her to a lot of people. We have a full recorded podcast we did that we're going to be putting up on our channel over the next couple days. Watch every show that we do, but we really encourage you to watch that one. Also, I featured her as the lead story in Netter News, which if you don't subscribe to, well, we'll find you. So remember, Netter News is our publication that blasts out to close to 100,000 people. Rebuild California helps sponsor this. And I want to spend a little time tonight on getting to some of the stories of the day, kind of drilling down from national to California. And I'm going to go off camera for 1 second and fix my technical difficulties.
Well, Scott, the biggest national story, and it's relevant to California too, is this coup by activist federal judges who are trying to take over the president's responsibility and micromanage the executive branch. Now, let's see what these liberal judges, who, by the way, many of whom have family members who are receiving money, USAID money, and in one case, a federal judge ruling on immigration whose daughter worked for a nonprofit that tried to sneak illegal aliens into our country, an obvious conflict of interest. And
And,
there's
and,
federal
and NGO, if I
judicial
recall.
council rules about ethics. Let me just add this. My aunt was a Superior Court judge in Los Angeles County before she retired.
That's state,
I
not federal.
knew, I knew many of her colleagues. Some were Democrats, some were Republicans, some were middle of the road. These tended not to be very political people because the judicial ethics requirements are so harsh that they were paranoid about even the appearance of a conflict of interest or any kind of question about ethics. And in fact, my uncle had to drop out of the San Marino Country Club because they didn't admit women in the 70s. And that was considered a potential conflict of interest by some of the liberals on the court. So a real judge, people I've known and looked eyeball to eyeball across the political spectrum, are very, very careful about conflicts of interest, but not the political Democrat judges in D.C. Trump should ignore them. Congress should invoke a procedure like Thomas Jefferson did in 1802, where he completely reorganized the inferior courts to the Supreme Court and got rid of the Federalist Party judges.
I think we need to do something and do it quick, and we need to intervene because apparently the Supreme Court is a bunch of idiots sitting on their butt and not intervening. And you got district court judges trying to run the stinking country.
Well,
There was
and
a comment,
Congress can also defund those judges' courtrooms. No clerks, no secretary, no money.
or close them off altogether and reorganize the whole district court system. Here's a quote that was in the Epic Times that was attributed.
Epoch. Say it right or they'll send you to communist China.
Epic Times. They this is according to Epic Times. The DOJ said this: the government cannot and will not be forced to answer sensitive questions of national security and foreign relations in a rushed posture without an orderly briefing and a showing that these questions are somehow material to the live issue. Answering them, especially in the proposed timetable, is flagrantly improper and presents grave risks to the conduct of the government in areas wholly unsuited to the micromanagement supervision of a district court judge. And I think that was one of the nicer comments because the reality of it is this is exclusively in the domain of the executive branch, period. Judges have no say.
Correct. And Kevin Kiley, who I'm pretty good buddies with, and I was delighted to see this weekend. And before we leave this subject on the convention, what was very interesting this week, John, don't leave California. I see a comment on the screen here, because what is gradually changing within the Republican Party, and I'll get to Kiley's quote here, because it's important to what my producer and our rebuild team did during the recall. The
That's
electeds, pardon?
Congressman Kiley.
Congressman Kevin, I'm sorry, Congressman Kiley, Kevin DeMistel. Him, Hoover, Jay Obernolte, they came to the convention and they hung out. There is a comeback being made. But Kevin Kiley had a great quote this week, nothing to do with me, that he said, look, when Trump talked about impeaching some of these judges, it's simply that rule of law exists within the Constitution. Trump isn't changing the law. That struck me, gentlemen, because of what we did during the recall. The press was all over us. How dare you recall Gavin Newsom? We simply followed what was in the California Constitution, and Trump is actually following what is the right of himself and Congress, if needs to be done, within the U.S. Constitution. And we spend a lot of time, don't we, guys, running down a back and forth, this and that, and the left drives down rabbit holes. But I strongly recommend for everybody on the left, especially in California, what do you guys think of that? If we can raise enough money, we send them a copy of the U.S. Constitution, and for the left in California, a copy of the California Constitution, because it really helps to read it once in a while, folks, and see what rights we have already.
Mark Levin has been on a rampage this week, so hat tip to Mark.
Shocking.
And he's basically sitting there telling everybody, and his specialty is a constitutional attorney. There's probably not very many constitutional experts more knowledgeable than Levin, even though he's just a dumb talk show host, right? But he's basically saying that the original concept of the Constitution was that all three bodies would be able to determine whether something was constitutional or not. It was never intended for the judiciary to be the sole, operator or proprietary uh, domain to determine whether something was constitutional or not. And they just basically stole it in Marbury versus Madison way back in like 1801.
1803. And that was one of the Federalist judges who was opposed to Jefferson.
Yes,
And
appointed
and
by Adams in
I,
his
w- I
eleventh.
would I would advocate that Trump do exactly that. That the executive branch needs to reassert control and say we are a co-equal branch. The president takes the same oath that the judges take. He says, "I have a co-equal right to determine what is constitutional in the executive branch."
Oh, I would argue, and I think Levin would argue also, that just the opposite is that the Constitution devotes like the first six articles to the legislative branch, and then the next three articles to the executive, and it has like one on the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court's the only court that's in the Constitution. Congress is allowed to establish the other courts and court systems and locations, etc., but that's not something that's in the Constitution. So I would say that the founding fathers clearly thought that the biggest responsibility should be in the legislature, then the executive, and then the judiciary. Judiciary is far and beyond the third lowest, supposed to have no footprint type of a position within our constitutional framework.
But Scott, look at the irresponsibility of members of both parties in Congress that did zero oversight and allowed this corrupt kleptocracy of theft and money laundering through the federal government in fake accounts that are spending money that wasn't appropriated, 4 point something trillion in USAID, and all the money that was laundered to family members and political allies. Congress has totally failed in its oversight.
But
Well,
it's in, uh, go ahead, Scott.
I'd say it goes a step further. Is not only are they uh, uh, not doing what they're supposed to be doing and providing oversight of the judiciary, just the opposite. They are purposely appointing judges that will be activist judges that will legislate from the bench, because then they can legislate things from the bench that the politicians don't have to take heat from it from their constituents. So it's a way to duck responsibility and try and accomplish things that they couldn't accomplish because they'd be voted out of office if they did. Mike.
Well, I think it's interesting as we talk about what the right is trying to accomplish, we talk about the Constitution. Now, if you could see me on screen right now, you'll notice I'm surrounded by a couple pictures. Let's talk about what the left is doing, which to me is one of the bigger stories. The left is on the we on the right are unhappy with the way things are going sometimes, and so we read things like the Constitution. As Scott points down, what does the left do? They burn crap down. Okay? And Spring Monkey, that's what we want to keep a lot of people informed and not probably getting as much press as it should. But can you imagine if conservatives with torches went out and started burning things down? The reality is, Kurt, I'm going to toss this one to you because just because you own a Tesla, and by the way, for all of you out there, if you're on the left, and I know some watch the show, you're encouraging electric cars. Elon Musk did the best job of getting electric cars on the market. So, Kurt, what's the left doing with Tesla electric cars and
Well,
trucks
if you
right
look at it
now?
from a legal perspective, uh, there are increasingly credible allegations that this is a coordinated effort, which would be a racketeering conspiracy by the funders and the politicians of the Democrat Party because they're throwing a temper tantrum because they lost in November. The reason they lost in November is no one wants their ridiculous policies. No one wants their children castrated. No one wants tampons in boys' bathrooms. No one wants men to play in women's sports and pretend to be women. Nobody wants to funnel hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine and ignore the Americans that were burned out in Lahaina and were washed out in western North Carolina and Florida. The Biden administration was a complete failure. And now we're finding out that a lot of the executive orders and pardons Biden signed were signed with an auto pen. They might not even be valid.
But a great point you made earlier, and yes, John, it's Soros, John Duncan there. Okay? The left has a coordinated attempt. And I want to go into something else about the convention in 1 second. They are putting out, we're on there, by the way, left, we're on your feeds. I went into even one of your podcasts today and listened to one of your shows.
Mike,
But
you
they
should
have a
get combat pay for
coordinated
that.
Wait a second. Was
I
that our governor's feed?
No, it was Midas and Michael Cohen, whatever Midas's first name is, and I started trolling them a bit just to get back to them. But what's interesting is prior to the convention that we went to, um, I got friends in different places in Rebuild, California, and they fed us the feeds where the protesters could literally pick from a menu as to what they wanted to protest at the Republican at the
Could they order?
Republican
Could they go like on
convention.
Amazon and order a pallet of bricks to be left conveniently by the CRP headquarters or convention?
Well, no, but they didn't do it very well or read the weather report. I found that quite fascinating because as you saw the 9 protesters out there in the rain, this was actually pretty funny. Fire and rain, if you will. We'll get back to the Tesla picture in 1 second. Okay. They brought cardboard signs in non waterproof markers. So their signs were running down and they were out there. Apparently, they might want to read the weather report for coming out and at least use plastic with Sharpies,
They
you
they
idiots.
could use the
So you're,
Tesla on
we could,
fire
I
to
could,
keep warm, huh?
correct. And let's go into that. So, Tessa, for all of you out there on the left, that think by yelling and screaming and kicking, and by the way, if you're going to show up at a protest, at least look better. Most of you out there with your runny signs and whatever, it didn't look like you even had bought clothing. I'm going to be very rude here in the last 5 years. If you want, and hadn't shaved since the turn of the century. So the reality is, if you want people to take you seriously, look and act normal. Because it's really hard to take you seriously when you come out dressed like you're a band of bums from a Disney ride and when you are coordinating lighting Teslas on fire.
Hey, by the way, my son sent me a photograph of he was stopping to getting gas today. He lives in Kentucky, um, and he paid $1.89 for regular. Just so
Drill,
just
baby, drill.
And I filled up today. I thought I was getting
Now,
a deal at 4.19 9. Most of the gas I see around here is like $5 a gallon.
Well, that
No wonder.
actually leads us into a story. Turns out that the Republican Senator Brian Jones introduced SB2 to repeal Gavin Newsom's 65-cent gas price hike. And there was a committee vote scheduled this morning. I don't know if it happened. But Mike, earlier you talked about sending copies of the Constitution. I have a better way to use the money in California. We should do a voter registration mailer or online solicitation or email campaign to register voters Republican and talk about this 65-cent gas tax that the Democrats imposed.
I spent most of the convention, and Scott was my witness, trying to get across to members of the Republican Party up the food chain that we need to start using digital exactly what you said, Kurt. We do the show on social media. We've done the show on KABC radio, where, Kurt, by the way, you've got some breaking news on the FCC, which regulates radio, but by the way, doesn't regulate us, which is why we're California Free Radio. Kurt, hit us with that breaking
President Trump
news.
has just fired both Democrat commissioners on the Federal Trade Commission. And you know, Mike, that's exactly what I voted for, along with the other things he's done the last 2 months.
Oh, I misunderstood because I saw on the screen. Is it Federal Trade or Federal
Oh, Federal
Communications?
Trade Commission, the commissioners on the Federal Trade Commission.
Ah, I got my FT versus my FC wrong. And it's about time. There we go. Federal Trade Commission. Well, my eyes are going at my age. It's time. Obviously, Donald Trump has made quite an impact. And again, on March 20th, I believe, it'll be 60 days since he's been in office. And the left's response has been to burn things down, try to protest with paid protesters, which is another question that I have there. Thanks, Dan, the producer. I'm picking up on the right consonants here. Okay. Um, if you're out there and you have to be paid to protest, do you really believe in what you're doing? Do you really believe in what you're doing? If you don't believe in what you're doing and you simply want a job protesting, look, Gavin Newsom, if there's still any jobs left, has made it so you can work in fast food. And if you believe in eating, go flip a burger. But to stand out on a corner on something that you don't believe in simply because you're getting paid, it's supposed to be a political
Yeah, but they've been
protest.
astroturfing for
And
years.
AstroTurfing?
Yeah,
Explain that.
paid protests, just what Mike said.
Okay.
I didn't know that was called astroturfing. You know, another bill which got introduced today, and we had a big press conference for it in Sacramento that I wasn't able to attend, is Shannon Grove, Senator Shannon Grove. And I asked Jessica Patterson about that, who wasn't aware of it in the press conference I was at over the weekend, introduced a bill today into the state Senate for school choice. Because it's about time we not only broke the backs of the unions, to your point, Kurt, polluting our kids, it's about the time we gave people without a lot of money, which is most of us in California, a chance to educate the kids the way they want. It got held up in committee and will probably never see the light of day. But don't worry, because at 1:30 today, another press conference at the same Hyatt Scott and I were staying at, separate rooms. I want to be
Thanks for
very, very clear
sharing.
on that. Um, I just want everybody to be clear that Scott and I were at the convention at the same time, not necessarily together. Kurt, don't run with that. Um, so we are going to start collecting signatures soon for the CEO or Children's Educational Opportunity, which is basically the school choice. And if the legislature doesn't put it through, we, the people, will get it done.
So when will that come out?
It's going to come out in about 30 to 60 days. The first press conference was today. And then we scheduled strategically because Shannon Grove had her press conference with legislature at 8:30 in the morning. We're working with Shannon Grove's office. And then we had our press conference at 1:30 today, both across the street in Sacramento, parents, advocates, and members of the press. So the squeeze play is going to be
So
on.
the
Go ahead,
so
Scott.
was it submitted to the Attorney General yet for title and summary, or is it still in that getting ready phase?
It's been submitted for title and summary. It is ready to have the trigger pulled on it, but we're not quite ready to pull the trigger on it yet. Now, you ask an interesting point because last time it got submitted for title and summary, and they found something wrong 8 days before the deadline. Unfortunately, the deadline was 10 days before. It had been submitted close to 2 months before, and they magically found something at the last minute. So we're going to get a head start this time on it and start doing it in 2025 so they have lots of time to go back and forth. But it's been approved in theory, but they may find something wrong at the last minute. That's why we're doing this in 2025
So is
versus
this going to be what they
2026.
refer to often as vouchers?
In effect, we're actually going to do a whole show on that. The best way to understand, you'll be getting vouchers. It will give people a chance to do options with their money if they don't want to, if they don't spend their entire stipend, if you will. It varies slightly from Grove's bill, but the objective is to get something
So
done.
to explain to some people who have maybe not heard about school choice before, basically allows you to put you as a parent to decide where your kid goes to school, either homeschool, parochial school, Catholic school, or public school, and then you would get a voucher to make the payment to whatever that school is. And like you say, if you let's say that they give you $6,000 and it only costs you $5,000 a month to actually educate your kid in that Catholic school, then you get that extra $1,000 a month that could go towards maybe their college tuition or something down the road. So it's not lost and it encourages you to save money. So basically, it puts the responsibility of educating your kids back into the parents' lap rather than this basically the teachers union, who is the ones that kind of control the public school system, which we're forced to participate in unless you're wealthy enough to be able to afford tuition on top of paying the taxes. So it's really good. I mean, if you want to homeschool, you want to send your kid to a religious school, uh, if the public school in your area is better than the other schools, you
Oh,
choose.
come on, Scott.
Well,
There
I
is
would
no
have
good public school
very
today.
low hopes that a public school would be better than a private school. But it may be that when the vouchers first come out, there's not going to be enough room in the private schools because everybody's going to want to leave
No,
the public.
people will create. It needs to include homeschool, and people will create new schools.
Exactly. Kurt's right. It will create an
But the bottom
industry.
line is instead of the money, instead of the schools determining where the money goes, the parents do. The money follows the kids rather than the kids following the money, the way that it
Correct.
is now.
Correct. And it's look, Donald Trump is all for it. He's proposed it. There's about 5 or 6 states. There'll be a phase-in plan on it. But let's face it, the Democrats who are funded by the unions want to stop this, just like they want to keep hitting us with the gas tax, and just like another really big pet peeve of mine, because you know what's coming soon in April?
Well, I thought spring
Springtime.
showers, right?
Now,
In California, it never rains
spring
in California.
showers. Easter is coming for us Christians. But what you know what's also coming in April for
April
me,
Fool's
Scott and
Day.
Kurt?
That's Newsom's holiday, right?
My annual tax bills for my property, for my insurance, for my car insurance, and for my homeowner's insurance,
Right. Paying property tax,
for
paying federal
people's
income
renters
taxes,
insurance.
state income taxes, and now what's the new thing we're getting hit with? Bigger insurance rates.
Correct. And if you think you're ready for a shock out there, if you're paying, and by the way, if you watch this show and you say I rent, it rolls down. And your renter's insurance is going up because of the high crime rate. and the rates are going to go up 25 to 40%. It's not all the faults of the insurance company because they're a free enterprise. And the government, in effect, in California, is trying to do a lot to rope you in to taking over insurance. And they're saying, look, go on, the cow plan, do this, do that. But the insurance companies pay for that. And the more people go on the cow plan, kind of like communism, if you will, the more everybody's insurance is going up, the more Teslas you light on fire in the left. I hate to break it to you, that's more that State Farm and Farmers and Geico have to pay. That rolls over to the other people's auto insurance, like me, who doesn't drive a Tesla. So everything you're doing on the left is now rolled down to our insurance. Scott, we
Okay,
could talk
so
about that.
I use State Farm, so I'm particularly interested in State Farm, and
Are you in
no,
good
that's Allstate.
hands?
Come on, we're like a good
Oh,
neighbor.
damn it.
So
Oh, I'm
anyway,
sorry.
one of the
I should leave the pun away that a good neighbor in good hands, but let's put
yeah,
that
not that
down.
good
Go
of a
ahead.
neighbor. So uh, the state insurance commission just approved a 22% rate increase statewide for State Farm. So that was in an effort to try and get them not to leave the state altogether. And State Farm is the largest insurer in the state of California right now, even though they're not writing new policies. They insure more than anybody else.
Yeah, but
So
Scott, they also cut 70,000 policies last year, so they've got one foot out the door.
they're aiming at it because, hey, if you can't make money, what's the point? You sell in volume. Oh, so you get to lose money faster and in bigger piles. So the other thing that you saw happen was that um, so because of the fires, the people that were in these fire prone areas, a lot of them could not get insurance from State Farm, Allstate, or whoever, because the risk was just too high. They didn't want to write policies for them. So the state was the insurer of last resort. They call it the FAIR Plan. But guess what? The FAIR Plan has run out of money already with all of the claims coming in on this last Newsom and Mayor uh, Bass fiasco. So guess what? They got permission, all the insurance companies, or excuse me, the California FAIR Plan people, all the other insurance companies have to pay the difference. So they have to pay into this plan, and they're allowed to come after the ratepayers for a certain portion of it. Guess what? You're going to get a $60 one time. If anybody believes it's one time, I mean, come on. The price of the fire is still being calculated. It's not going to go down. Can we all agree to that? So it's going to continue to go up, but they're saying there's a one time charge of $60 for every person who pays for homeowners insurance in the entire state. They're going to have to pay an extra $60 to backfill the big hole that Gavin Newsom and Mayor Bass left because of the fires.
And by the way, what story that didn't get a lot of pub is that Kurt, you talk about 70,000 policies being canceled, which in the big picture isn't that many, but it's still a
Yeah, for
lot if it's
you in
you.
the Pacific
And you could also
Palisades,
talk,
it's a big deal.
and the reason that happened, because the insurance company said you're not enforcing even your current state regulations on clearance. You're actually in, look, the insurance companies are in business. Unlike the government, they're not run by idiots. And they said, look, we could see that reservoirs are empty. We could see there is a problem with water. And by the way, that makes the risk higher. And so, what are we going to do? Spring Monkey, thank you very much for going on here. And I also want to get to him on a comment he made on the screen, real quick, because our electric rates are something else which are going up tremendously. So, electricity, insurance, taxes. Guys, I got a question for you. Where actually is it going to end? And what exactly is the left protesting in California? Do they want these prices to go up? Are we just focused on the price of eggs? What exactly is the end game of the left here? What do you think it is? To drive us all out so they can
No, the
have
end game is to
cheap
steal as
land?
much money as they can, like we've talked about on the show. $24 billion in California for homeless programs that they can't account for 1 penny for. Doge needs to come to California, and I think you'll find, I'm going to speculate here with no proof, so these are allegations. I
It's
think
not a
you'll
very.
find that Democrat politicians have been stealing from California taxpayers just like Democrat politicians have been stealing from federal taxpayers.
Well, here's a non allegation for you that is actually a fact. That if you're a Californian and a citizen and work real hard, guys, ready? You've really screwed up. And if you've been paying for your health insurance, you've really screwed up. And Joshua, I want to answer your question. If any money you make in California, they will tax you at the California rate, and we're one of the few states to do this. They will come for every
Well,
pound
there's
of
an
flesh they
exact
can
answer to
out of you,
Joshua's
Joshua.
question. It's 9.3%. And then it escalates depending on how much money you make up to 13.3 with an add-on so it can be over 14%. So Joshua, if you're making $1 million
Correct.
a year, it's 14%. If you're in the middle class, 9.3.
But let's hold on. Kurt, there's a good way for Joshua to avoid that. You know how it
Uh,
is? Be an illegal alien. Because if you're an illegal alien, just renounce
no,
your
no, no, no. That's
citizenship to the
bad
United
advice. Don't
States.
have him do that.
I'm being facetious. Calm down, big boy. Joshua, stay an American. However, I will say that if you are an illegal alien in California, as well documented, you could get free health insurance. The unfortunate part that Gavin told Ashley Zavada, great reporter, by the way, follow her on X, another buddy of mine in the press, if you will, um, that he continues to fund these illegal aliens for their free health
Even though
care,
he ran out
even
of money,
though
right?
there was a whole. Oh, he not only ran out of money, it's the tune of 7 to 9 billion a year. We're not sure. It started at seven, it's going to nine. Holy crap. But he plans to keep on doing it. Okay. He plans to just keep on funding. So I'm trying to understand how much of our money that we don't have Gavin is going to continue to spend. And where do you guys think this money is actually going to come from? I mean, how much do you think they could tax people like Joshua living out of state who've got to work in state, or even a Tommy for the baseball games? Let's go back to baseball that he plays in California. He's taxed that way on. The tax rates can only go up as the government spends way more than they take
Well,
Well, I've
in.
how
got
embarrassing
another solution. Actually, you talked earlier about what can we do in California. Tax teachers unions. Tax teachers unions. They're destroying our education system. The power to tax is the power to destroy. I'm a product of Los Angeles City public schools, and they suck now, and the teachers union destroyed them.
And you could tell that. Listen to Kurt very carefully.
would you basically get rid of their nonprofit status for all unions?
That's a different solution and an excellent solution, Congressman. I adopt your friendly amendment. And but I'm talking about taxing, like Trump is talking about taxing university endowments. You know, Columbia has $15 million in endowments. Why are we giving them money every year from the taxpayers? They can pay for their own research out of the interest on that $15 billion.
And you know what's interesting in California? We tax veterans, one of the few states that tax veterans on their benefits, in case you didn't know that. So so when a veteran gets a stipend or a retirement or gets their pension, they're taxed on it in California.
Even if they don't
And
live in
again,
California.
we're taxed if they well, no, if they don't live here, their pension wouldn't be addressed here. That's
Okay.
different than working in California. But let's understand that Gavin Newsom is taxing the poor people. We talk about our system being measured. We get most of our money from the rich, where it's easy for them to move out. But every time Gavin Newsom and the Democrats, supported by the unions, turns around and gives money to nonprofits that then, to Kurt's point, isn't taxed, It's raising everything up, which for everyone out there, if you really, you know what really ticks me off? It's causing my In and Out burger to cost more because that means the average person again has to make more. They fight about the minimum wage because it's not a living wage. Then they fight about all these things as they spend a tremendous
Now,
amount of
I want to
money.
mention something, Mike.
I want to give
Remember
a
the
fact.
owner of In and Out closed the Irvine office. We talked about this a few weeks ago. Consolidated to Baldwin Park, where the first In and Out was founded in 1948, but now it's moving. Now it's
Kurt remembers that. You were about 12 and had your first
now
burger there,
is
right?
moving to Tennessee. So the warning here for California residents is she likes to have In and Outs within a day's travel. So if she's living in Tennessee, remember the In and Out that closed in Oakland? I mean, how many more In and Outs in high crime neighborhoods could close as she picks up and moves on?
This is happening across the board. Rusba, my buddy who I serve in the LA Tax Board with, did a show on California Insider. My friend Angela Marston, who runs Pineapple Hill and Saloon, all the restaurant owners. By the way, what I want to give a shout out to Andrew Gruel, who runs fabulous restaurants, is a great conservative. And before I forget, because I'm absent minded or my connection could go again at any minute, Andrew Gruel just got picked, I believe, to serve on the Huntington Beach City Council today. But they will all tell you it's getting impossible on any level to do business here. We're going to have virtually no tax base as Gavin shells out money and shells out benefits to nonprofits that aren't effective, or NGOs as we call them today, and rams it up our posterior, giving benefits on different levels to people that haven't earned them. They're not citizens, even if they're homeless. Don't leave them homeless, but do something and stop trying to spend our money doling out to
All right.
your
So
friends
I want to
and
jump
people.
subjects. Sorry to walk all over you there. Our favorite guy, Gruesome Newsom. We talked about his new podcast. What's this podcast called? Here's Newsom. I don't know. So he started out by having right wingers on it, as he called it, the other side. He started with Charlie Kirk. He had Steve Bannon on there, and guess what happened? His numbers tanked. Surprise, surprise, right? You had the people from the right, our side, saying that he was insincere, fake, and pandering, right? And his side, amongst liberals,
Which
would
they
And
would
he's
are.
always been that way. That's not just on his podcast.
right, but we always viewed him. But now he came out of the closet, right? I mean, he sits there and talks about how he thinks it's unfair for men to compete in women's sports, but yet he signed the bill that allows men to compete in women's sports.
No, he said that's a good question. No, he didn't say it.
No, he said I would agree with that
But
Right,
it's
he's
and,
not willing to
and
unfair.
do
the
anything about it.
legislation proposed by Republicans to prohibit men pretending to be girls from participating with girls' sports or using girls' locker rooms. Has he endorsed it? Has he signed on to it? Has he told his Democratic minions in the legislature to pass it? Nada, nada, nada. It's all lip service. And so no wonder everybody thinks he's insincere. But his liberal friends, the favorability dropped from 46% to 30%. So guess who his guest was this week?
Oh, I forget.
Tampon
I
Tim.
did see it. I don't. It's going to be
Tampon Tim.
who?
I mean, does anybody like Tim Walz? Does anybody remember that he was a vice presidential candidate with Kamala? I mean, Tampon Tim has got to be like the most negatively looked at Democrat in the entire country. And he had him on. And guess what? His favorability
I think Gavin's right there with him,
His
but we
net
could debate
favorability
that one.
dropped from a +4 to a -6, another 10-point swing in the wrong direction. I think the
Hey, Mike,
podcast.
you want to
And
hear
I
something
and
that'll
I
make you feel good?
Well, I like Steve Bannon
no,
bomb.
Bert, I
North
don't.
Dakota
Of course I
jury
do.
just found Greenpeace liable for $660 million in
Oh, they
damages
got
for the
liable for
Dakota
that.
Access
Good.
Pipeline protest, which will bankrupt and destroy Greenpeace.
Oh, we should be so lucky.
So let's
Well,
celebrate.
hold
Let's
on.
celebrate the destruction of Greenpeace.
Absolutely. That means we're going to see whales protesting with signs in their blowholes.
Protesting
Um,
that Greenpeace will no longer
yes.
bother them.
And by the way, I want to give a shout out to Magdalena with the technical difficulties. We can't put her in tonight, but Magdalena's comment is great. Is Gavin turning Republican? I think he's just trying to make everybody happy, making nobody happy.
Pandering.
I also think pandering, that's a good word for it, but I like my explanation, it's much longer. Um, Here's something else. I'm going to go back to this book, Fool's Gold. The reason I like this book by Susan Crabtree, it puts together everything. Hold on one second, Scott. I want to get a picture of you holding it on the screen.
Just take a picture. We're so high tech. Why don't you just do a capture?
We are very, yeah, I will capture it later. Look, everyone out there, you have to understand Gavin Newsom, and when you watch our show that I'm going to post that we did at the convention, funded a bust of himself. Gavin Newsom,
Mike, can you
again,
tell our audience about that? I don't want to let that one go. What?
okay, Gavin Newsom had a bust. They put up a bust to him at the San Francisco City Hall. For those of you, the bust is the top head on the body. Don't go there, okay? The bust is that top head which is on the body. He told everybody that it was bought for him. It was not. It was bought with by an NGO that was funded by behested payments, which means at the request of Gavin Newsom, to make it look like the people of San Francisco
Money
liked
laundering.
him. In effect. And by the way, as a pun, look for my pun on the show we did. It is literally so bad for Gavin, he could only afford people to give him money to pay for the head. Where's the rest of the body? Have you ever walked outside a baseball stadium and seen a Jackie Robinson or Tony Gwynn, just the head on a out there?
Hey, at
No, you
Reagan
haven't.
Airport, you got the
Gavin
whole
Newsom,
Reagan there and the statue waving.
even in Newport Beach,
No,
you
the
got the
whole
whole
John
Reagan
Wayne at the
statue
airport.
in the bunny. There, right. Ooh, Scott, you gonna put the grok up? Yes, put that grok up. I know what I think I know what this is, so I
Oh, the
can't wait to
bust
see it.
is
But
is it? It's totally Newsom. It's not a good bust.
well, it could there be such thing? Gavin Newsom with behested payments means at the request of the governor, based on he would hand these companies no bid contracts during COVID. The companies would turn around, contribute at the request of Gavin Newsom to the tune of almost 300 million a year, and those same companies funded his wife's NGO or nonprofit so she could make films polluting our kids and then sell them, yes, sell them back to the public schools as you got to watch this using our tax money. Kurt, I got to tell you, money laundering doesn't do justice. If the Italian mob in New York had taken Gavin Newsom's business model, they would doing better today, or they'd still be in existence versus running the numbers rackets. It literally is goes beyond money laundering.
Money, 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 money.
Like the song on our radio show,
So the
Scott.
book,
All right, another good one is Congressman Darrell Issa and Judicial Watch are suing California over allowing mail-in ballots to be counted up to a week after Election Day, saying it violates the Constitution.
Oh, I hope they succeed. I mean, we're an embarrassment to the rest of the country. It takes us 30 days to count ballots, and they don't know the result. And we've had a lot of races. I don't know why it always goes for Democrats and against Republicans. Oh, wait, they cheat. Uh, They allow ballots to come in as long as they were postmarked by election day, up to 7 days after the election. So that's the part that they're suing. They're basically saying, you can't take any new ballots after election day, and you have to basically count what's there, and that's it, right?
And boom. For yes, by the way, shout out to Randy. Randy tells Kurt and Scott to quit interrupting me. They have to interrupt me, Randy, or they never get a word in edgewise. And Joshua, you're right. It's PPE loans. There's so much corruption just coming out now about COVID and what went on, and people are going to jail. But I'm going to go on record and say this, and I'm not even going to say allegedly. Sue me, Gavin. We've sued each other before. Yes, indeed, Scott. I told you all about that. I think, Gavin Newsom, that your corruption, indeed, even if borderline legal, you and your wife should at the best do a short term in a white collar prison, and at the worst, do a longer term. It is literally corruption. It is corruption at the highest level. Again, this book, not to oversell it, but it's time that everybody took a look at it holistically all together. And as we talk all the time about this, Gavin Newsom, Rob Bonta, the rest of the corrupt state legislature doesn't have the interest of the people in mind. They only have their
But
own
Mike, we've got
interest.
another Newsom corruption story that's not in the book, I'll bet you. Turns out that Newsom sent 100 business leaders in California phones that were those prepaid burner phones that were paid by the California Protocol Foundation, and they were programmed with Newsom's phone number. So I wonder if there wasn't a message saying, well, like the mafia, you know, we're going to come by and collect some money from your business, and it'd be a shame if something happened to your business. I mean, that is corruption.
Well, I think portions of that indication were in the book, and I actually
Excellent.
retweeted today that the next thing Gavin Newsom is doing. Kurt, have you heard about
Mike,
this?
nothing you say will surprise me,
Hold
but
on.
there's so much corruption by Newsom, I can't possibly know it all.
Well, this is alleged and facetious that he is actually going to be running seminars for the cartels how they can run their business because he's way better at doing burner
You
phones.
like this bust?
No,
Where is that thing?
In San Francisco City Hall,
Well, I
along
thought
with
you said
all.
it was just the head. You're saying it's the whole body?
No, that's it.
Oh, just
that's
from
it.
the just
You're
from
just
the
presenting
nipples
pretty
up,
much the
huh?
whole thing.
Yeah, you see it. That's the base right there. But the fact that they put him in this little scrawny, skinny sports coat or whatever, and they did a really good job on the greased back hair, don't you think?
Well, he reminds me of Freddie Blassie from the Dr. Demento show, Pencil Neck Geek.
This doesn't look like it's in bronze. I mean, it looks like he got modeling clay out and painted it with watercolor or something.
Quite honestly, it looks to me like something you might see at one of those Halloween haunted houses to scare the more children. And Gavin Newsom, please get this to Gavin. Text this to Gavin. Text the show to Gavin. Push this Gavin out in his feed. Gavin, for the children, for the children, could you have that taken down from the San Francisco City Hall? Just for the kids. Because no child under the age of 18, certainly under the age of 12, should have to be subjected to looking at that while trying to explore the halls of city government in the city county of San
Well, Mike, it
Francisco.
reminds me of something you'd see. What was that wax museum in Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco? We were kids. What was the name of that
Oh,
place?
yeah. Right.
Yeah,
Ripley's
Ripley's
Believe It
Believe It
or
or Not.
Not.
It looks like that.
Ripley's.
I posted it on X, on my X account,
Indeed, it does.
at TaxFighter7.
Yep, there you go. Go to at TaxFighter7, go to mine. Here's the story. Kurt, a couple other stories you wanted to cover besides Tesla burning, besides the taxes going up, besides the state going bankrupt from
Well, this
supporting
will make
illegal
our
aliens.
California
Let
viewers and
me
listeners mad. Newsom wants to fund health care under Medi-Cal for every illegal alien. Now he's asking for another $3.4 billion to pay for more illegal alien health care. How many Americans need health care, Mike?
It
How many
doesn't matter.
Californians?
A lot of Americans need health care, and the system is broken. Thank you, Barack Obama. But I'm rather shocked. I really am. And I want to put this in perspective a little bit. That Gavin Newsom would cut whatever the figure is 700 million, 500 million, 100 million from helping us fight fires that burn houses down to fighting harder to fund healthcare for people that probably don't belong there. And gentlemen, I'm going to ask you to weigh in on that in the last 4 minutes because that's the part I just find amazingly disgusting.
Go for it,
Scott?
Kurt.
Now you're not cutting me off, but that's your cue. Back to you, Scott. We're
So
working
what's
on our cadence
disgusting
here.
about it?
Paying for illegal aliens? I don't want to give
What?
them a nickel of our money.
No, what's disgusting is he cuts firefighting budget, but he wants to increase and continue to pay for illegal aliens. What should come first? A citizen's home not being
Well,
burned down
well, Mike, let's just
or
tell the truth. Why are
giving
they
free
doing
health
this?
care?
They're doing it because they want to have illegal aliens register to vote, give them driver's licenses, and vote for them by stuffing ballot boxes even 7 days after elections. That's why they're
And,
really doing it.
and giving them freebies to do that, one of which is medical care. And you get free medical care, they have to show need, but oh, surprise, surprise, all the illegal aliens are broke. They have a need. So if you make any money, if you have an actual job, you can't get your health care paid for. You're paying an arm and a leg to have health care, and you're required to have it. But if you're an illegal alien, you get it for free. But they ran out of money because they're all coming here for their free health care. So they asked for another $2.8 billion. Well, they're $2.8 billion in the red. I think they asked for more money than that. And the end of the fiscal year is not till the end of June. So, I'm sorry. The priorities are upside down. And you're right.
Now,
Public safety is
as
more
you,
important.
as you correct, as you roll down to the end here, I'm going to make the announcement. We will be shifting soon to Thursday nights. Gentlemen, because I'm absent-minded, when before the show? Are we doing this next week?
Starting next
Did we
Thursday.
decide?
We're switching to
All
Thursday.
right. So starting, I have good news and bad news for everybody out there. Your Wednesday nights are now free, but your Thursday nights, you are committed to watching us and listening, and we'll be watching to make sure that you are. And by the way, if you don't subscribe to Netter News because it's free, I'll also come looking for you.
And Mike, what
Gentlemen,
is
let's close this out
X
tonight.
feed?
At Netter Mike, LinkedIn, Mike Netter, Facebook, Rebuild California, and California Patriot Coalition, and certainly our YouTube channel, which I always forget about, called Outrage with Mike Netter, where we have a variety of videos. Kurt, what's the one thing Gavin did that ticked you off the most this week?
The list is
That's
long.
a that's a tough one. I would say the anti-white discrimination. 45 universities are under DOJ investigation for anti-white discrimination. One of which is UC Berkeley. So I know a family that went to, for high school kids they have these See the College Day, and went to UC Berkeley after being admitted this year, a senior in high school. And his dad said, I knew I could find you in the crowd because you were the only blonde there.
Well, I tell you, that's interesting. So basically, reverse racism. And Minnehaha, you can watch this show. It's replayed all over our social media. I will be giving you a quiz on this later. Scott, what's the one thing Gavin Newsom that really ticked you
Oh, the
off
fact
this
that he's
week?
charging us for the state's insurance company lack of funds due to his mismanagement of the fires, his mismanagement of the force that caused the extra fuel for the fires. All of this was totally preventable. And instead, I'm going to get a 22% rate increase by my homeowner's insurance and a $60 surcharge. I'm tired of paying for his loser mistakes. Period.
But Scott, there's some good news.
Perfect.
House and
And
Senate Republicans introduced a bill to block California's EV mandate. So in 2035, you'll still be able to drive your muscle car in California.
now let me end as we go down to what Gavin did this week that really ticked me off the most, which the left doesn't do, and Gavin, governor of the state. Okay?
Yes. I'm waiting.
By the way, Randy, and for everybody, I want to throw a thing here. We're going to cover how to become a delegate in another show. And that's a good point. We didn't get to it, but we do talk about it in the show that we're going to be posting tomorrow. But Gavin Newsom, here's what really ticks me off. People are burning Teslas. People have stormed our cities in the past, broken into businesses, and done violent, despicable things just because they disagree with our point of view. Gavin, what you didn't do this week was tell people on your side of the aisle to stop doing that. Speak up and be the governor of all Californians and tell people it is not a good thing, it is not right to destroy other people's property. By your silence, you are complicit. And it's about time, as the governor of California, whether you like it or not, and I don't like you, that you spoke up against things which are not only against the law, which are despicable. If you want to be less despicable, Gavin Newsom, then speak up against the things which are. Don't wait for people to tune into your podcast because they're not. Don't wait for think you should be running for president because you're not going to cut it. Stop doing what we elected you allegedly for, and that's to be the governor of California and speak up against the things that your side are doing which aren't right. And you're doing a lot of the wrong things, Gavin, but one of the things you should be doing is speak up against people destroying things and protesting violently because they don't agree with what's being done. Remember, everybody out there, it's up to you. We're going to talk about this again next Thursday, but it's up to you to do everything you can to take back this wonderful state of California because if you don't, they are going to take it from you. Gentlemen, thank you as always for what I thought was a good show, and I count. And for all the viewers and listeners and people tuning in, stay tuned. Rebuild California and California Free Radio. We're going to keep fighting. Dan, take us
And we've
out.
got another show coming on with Fool's Gold. We interviewed Susan Crabtree. Look for it on Tax Fighter 7 or Netter Mike on X.
And remember, guys, next Thursday, same time, Thursday.
Same batch.